14th question of Module 1 of Evidence-Based Reading and Writing. Many mosquito repellents contain natural components that work by activating multiple odor receptors on mosquitoes' antennae. As the insects develop resistance, new repellents are needed. Ki-Dong and her team found that EBF, a molecular component of a chrysanthemum flower extract, can repel mosquitoes by activating just one odor receptor, and this receptor, OR31, is present in all mosquito species known to carry disease. Therefore, the researchers suggest that in developing new repellents, it would be most useful to do something. And it's an inference question, so we have to logically complete it. So let's just recap what the whole passage says. Whole passage says that while repelling those mosquitoes, we generally target their odor receptors, and EBF is one of the best repellents indeed. It targets that specific receptor that's called OR31, which is indeed present in all the mosquitoes. And what the passage kind of leans towards targeting that OR31 receptor and doing the same thing as EBF, because it's proved effective against those mosquitoes. But EBF kind of after some time, mosquitoes are gonna get sort of resistant to it, so we'll have to develop a new sort of let's say a repellent, right? Sure, let's look at the options. A. Identify molecular components similar to EBF that target the activation of OR31 receptors. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It indeed says that researchers suggest that while developing new repellents, we should indeed do something that's similar to EBF that would also target OR31 receptors, which are present in all mosquitoes. B option: investigate alternative methods. Investigate alternative methods for extracting EBF molecules for chrysanthemums. So here in that we are not talking about methods, and I would say that it's completely off. But if you don't fully understand the passage, you may be just confused with those options that are incorrect, because most of the time they are just not given. Option C. Verify the precise locations of OR31 and other receptors on mosquitoes' antennae. We are not actually talking about OR31's location and about the location of other receptors. Yeah, it's not about the receptors at all. There is not a single mention even, and it's not the sort of a direction of our passage. So B goes out as well. The option: determine the maximum number of different autoreceptors that can be activated by a single molecule. Sure. Again, it's not given because we are not talking about the maximum number which can EBF or any other repellent that's similar to EBF activate. So again, it's completely off, and as you have noticed, all three incorrect options, they are not given. So the only way to go with inference questions is just to understand the passage itself. Let's look at question number 17 from the same module of the same test. As British scientist Peter Wibberley has observed, the Earth is not a very good timekeeper. Earth's slightly irregular rotation rate means that measurements of time must be periodically adjusted. Specifically, an extra leap second is added whenever time based on the planet's rotation lags a full 9/10 of a second behind time kept by precise atomic clocks. So it may seem a bit confusing at the beginning, but let's recall what complex sentence is. Complex sentence is a composition of independent and dependent clauses. Let's write it down. And where do we see an independent clause? Of course, it's that part. Right until that edit. Right? Sure. An extra leap second is added. So I mean, it's a complete sentence, so it can be an independent clause as well. You can refer to it as either to a simple sentence or independent clause. In our case, it's just an independent clause because it acts as a portion of a complex sentence which is about to come. Let's look at the second portion of our text, of our sentence in it. Whenever time based on the planet's rotation lags a full 9/10 of a second behind time kept by precise atomic clocks. So the thing that we see is whenever, and it's not that noticeable, guys, but whenever acts here as a subordinating conjunction, and if we remove that part and read that portion, the second portion of our sentence on its own, you're gonna see that it's indeed a complete sentence. So it works. It means that just by adding whenever, which is a subordinating conjunction, we can make an independent clause a dependent one. It means that we are being tested on complex sentences. So let's remove that part. Indeed. So when do we punctuate? When do we put punctuation before subordinating conjunctions, and when we do not? We put a punctuation whenever it is a contradictor, whenever it's a contradicting subordinating conjunction. When it's not a contradictor, we avoid any commas between independent and dependent clauses. So in our case, whenever it's not indeed a contradictor as such, so we should go with D. So option C and B, they are literally the same. Full stop and semicolon, they act in the same manner. When it comes to A is incorrect because of the reason that I just mentioned. We do not put any commas when our subordinating conjunction that comes in the middle is a non-contradictor. Let's continue with question number 25 of the first module. So this question, I would say, is a really tricky one because I don't regularly consider certain notes as difficult questions. They are quite easy, but sometimes they come really tricky. So let's read this one. The student wants to specify the reason the Pleiades appearance changed. Sure. If you read it, you guys can so exclude generally A and B options. They are 100% incorrect. But when you refer to C and D, you can see the part why this question is tricky and that subtle design of SAT. So let's read C. In the time since ancient cultures described the Pleiades as having 7 stars, two of the cluster stars have moved so close together that they now appear as one. So what C option says is that uh, since the time when this specific cluster was described to have 7 stars, two stars have moved so close together that they now appear as one. So it really shows that shift from 7 to 6 stars. Let's read D. The Pleiades has 7 stars, but two are so close together that they appear to be a single star. So this one seems to give a reason as well. But what's the difference between C and D? So it took me quite a long time to come to that difference between them. But the thing is that in the option, we don't quite demonstrate the shift. We just say that that specific cluster has 7 stars, but two stars are so close that they now appear to be just one star. It's not really showing a shift. But if you look at C, it says that since that time, it has changed and now it appears as 6 stars cluster generally. That's why option C has to be correct. Let's look at the first question of the second module of practice test number 10. Critics have asserted that the fine art and fashion rarely blank in a world where artists create timeless works for exhibition and designers periodically produce new styles for the public to buy. Luisinho Shoshone Bannock, beadwork artist and designer Jamie Okuma challenges this view. Her work can be seen in Metropolitan Museum of Art and purchased through her online boutique. So what we are talking about? We are talking about fine art. It means just art and fashion. And we are saying that they rarely do something in a world where people create so art for exhibitions and new styles for people to buy. And for now, we don't really have a sort of a clue for our word, but by reading the second sentence, we can indeed find that reference portion where the clue comes. We say that that specific designer challenges this view, the specific view that's given in the first sentence. Her work can be seen in Metropolitan Museum of Art and purchased through her online boutique. It means that she both produces her work for exhibition. Her work is both for exhibition and for purchasing it online. So it means that she's kind of combining fine art and fashion. So I would personally go with something like combine without looking at the options. And when you have a word in mind before going to the options, it means that you understood the passage fully and you don't really have to expect the word to be exactly the same in the options, in the correct option. But once you see that word, which is correct, which is supposed to be correct, you're going to fill it with your gut. So let's go and see which one indeed fits. Let's look at A. Prevail. Prevail means to dominate the market, right? But we are not talking about domination, are we? So A goes out. Succumb. Succumb is actually a really fancy word, and the thing is that most people actually fall into that trap of difficult words, and they think that if the word is difficult, probably that's the answer because SAT is such a tricky test, and it might have. I mean, they might be testing our vocab knowledge, but it's really distant from truth. It's indeed the trap. So even without knowing the meaning of succumb, which means okay, which means to defeat, not to defeat, but being bound to a defeat. Without even knowing the meaning of it, we can just cross it out because it seems really fancy. So diverge. So option diverge is not really referring to what we say, and it's rather an opposite of the tone of the passage because it goes really negative, and we should rather pick something that is in a positive tone. And when you look at intersect, you might feel it indeed that intersect really fits because fashion and fine art rarely intersect. It means that it challenges the view that fashion and fine art can go hand in hand and can be indeed both presented in one work. So D really fits here. Let's look at question number 7 from module 2. Which choice best describes the function of the underlying sentence in the text as a whole? Several studies have found negligible electoral consequences for governments that impose fiscal austerity measures. Yet some European governments recently suffered electorally due to their austerity programs. So what we know from that underlined portion is that there is an inconsistency between what studies have found between their conclusions and the actual cases. So it means that conclusions of the studies were that governments are not going to suffer after austerity programs, but real cases indeed prove the opposite of it. And the passage goes on saying Evelyn Hubscher and colleagues attribute this incongruity, it means inconsistency, to government's tendency, not followed in the recent European cases, to implement austerity programs strategically to avoid electoral costs, which has obscured the inherent political risks of austerity measures in the election data scholars have examined. And now that's in that scholar, she says that this incongruity or inconsistency is because of the governments who sort of manipulated those austerity programs, made them seem not that expensive, but indeed they are gonna pay those prices after the next elections, but they are not gonna seem that expensive. And because of that, because scholars also reviewed those cases, they came to sort of a fabricated biased conclusions, thinking that they have negligible consequences, not really not really tremendous implications in it, and they've come to that uh, obscure risks because of those fabricated austerity programs results. But indeed, it wasn't the case with other governments who didn't manipulate the austerity programs and who made it really straightforward. And for them, the consequences were tremendous. Sure, I guess That's all. So let's look at the options. We have to determine the function of that underlined portion. Let's look at A. It explains a discrepancy between what has been observed in a study settings and what has been observed in real world settings. That the text goes on to assert is attributable to the studies not using real world data. So it's not about data indeed. They use real world data, but the thing is that the data that they used cannot be a representation of all the cases, because data that they used was a sort of an exception, and it couldn't be used to come to any conclusions. So let's exclude that option. B option. It identifies a conflict between research findings and recent events that the text goes on to suggest is a consequence of a complicating factor in the data used to generate those findings. Yeah, this one really fits because it says that, first of all, it's a conflict between conclusions and real life implications, right? And it says that it's because of the complicating factor that was used to generate those findings, that was used to indeed come to a conclusion or make scholars to come to a conclusion that austerity programs are not that expensive. So this one fits perfectly. Let's look at C. It presents a long-standing divergence in research findings that the text goes on to say is due to different groups of researchers using data that derive from different electoral circumstances. Indeed, we are not talking about groups of researchers. It's totally off. It's not given, first of all, yeah. And what's more, yeah, there is a divergence, but it's not due to the factor that researchers just used different data sources and there was discrepancy in their conclusions. The option, it describes a recent exception to a general pattern in research findings that the text goes on to explain is a result of researchers underestimating the significance of inconsistencies in data they've analyzed. So indeed, researchers did not really underestimate the significance of inconsistencies. And uh, what's more, yeah, we are talking about a sort of exception, but the thing is that researchers examined and what's more important, drew their conclusions depending on that exceptions. That's the problem, but it definitely not that they underestimated the significance of those incongruities. So these also not fitting. So B is the best option because it talks about the conflict between the generally conclusions that researchers reached and the reasons why it happened. And it happened because they focused on some exceptional cases in which governments generally fabricated uh, those austerity programs and made them seem not that expensive as they actually are. Let's look at question number 8. Which choice best states the main idea of the text? 18th-century economist Adam Smith is famed for his metaphor of the invisible hand, which he putatively used to illustrate a robust model of how individuals produce aggregate benefits by pursuing their own economic interest. Note putatively. So putatively means supposedly. As Gavin Kennedy has shown, Smith deploys this metaphor only once in his economic writings, to make a narrow point about the then dominant economic theory of mercantilism, and it was largely ignored until some 20th-century economists eager to secure an intellectual pedigree for their views elevated it to a fully fledged paradigm. So we have to indeed identify the main takeaway, and it would be great if we do it before looking at the options. So what we say, we indeed know that Adam Smith is just a guy, is an economist who is famous for an invisible hand metaphor that he supposedly used to illustrate that even when people pursue some self-centered interests, their net impact is going to be positive. They'll end up indeed producing benefits. That was the that was indeed the intentions, not the intentions, but the meaning of invisible hand metaphor. And it says, note putatively, and it says that this specific metaphor was indeed ignored until 20th century economists gave them gave that specific metaphor a fully different meaning, a fully different, let's say, life, because of their own pursuits, because they wanted to get an intellectual degree, and because of this, they just um, dug up probably that specific metaphor because it was mentioned only once and it wasn't given that much of significance, but they just found it out somewhere and gave it a real significance, probably somehow made it more important. Uh, sure, let's look at the options and let's look which of them fits. Option A. Otto Smith is famed for his metaphor of the invisible hand. The metaphor was largely ignored until economists in the 20th century came to realize that the metaphor was a robust model that anticipated their own views. Uh, sure, but we are not saying that they realized and that this model was really a worthy one that anticipated their own views. Indeed, what we say um, is quite, not really related to that option because they d- they didn't they didn't really feel that it's a really good metaphor, but they just were ought to give it a significance in order to earn that degree, that intellectual degree, and it was just a way of earning it. They didn't really think that it's a cool thing. They just looked at that specific metaphor from a really self-centered point of view. So A doesn't really fit because they didn't realize it. They just figured out that they have that specific metaphor that they can use for um, selfish purposes. And indeed, it didn't really anticipate their own views. There is nothing said about their views. B. Some 20th century economists gave Smith's metaphor of the invisible hand a significance it does not have in Smith's work, but it is nevertheless a useful model of how individuals produce aggregate benefits by pursuing their own economic interests. So, okay, I wouldn't say that it's the main idea of the passage. We are not indeed saying that it's really something useful, and it's not the main idea of the text that inspired being sort of ignored and just being given that significance only by some other economists. It's kind of useful. It's not really the main idea of the passage if you read it closely and then just look at the bigger picture. So it cannot be the main idea of our text. Smith's metaphor of the invisible hand has been interpreted as a model of how individuals acting in their own interests produce aggregate benefits, but it was intended as a subtle critique of the economic theory of mercantilism. So again, this is completely correct. So it seems to be indeed a correct option, but the thing is that we are not talking about the details of that metaphor. We are not talking about the intentions of that metaphor first when Smith just wrote that book, wrote that piece, right? And then that uh, some people some people gave it a slightly different interpretation. It's more or less the same as Busby. Even though it's true, it's not the main idea of the text because the main idea is that it was largely ignored, and after that, because of some selfish interests, it was given a significance uh, because of their own that indeed pursued that significance of that metaphor in their own benefits. So we cannot really say that it was first intended as this, and after that it was indeed given a specific in the definition that's different from the previous one. It's not really the main idea again. Let's look at the option. The reputation of Smith's metaphor of the invisible hand is not due to importance of the metaphor in Smith's work, but rather to the promotion of the metaphor by some later economists for their own ends. So this one fits greatly because it really sends what we have predicted. It says that it's not because of the importance of the metaphor that Smith has achieved. Its importance is quite secondary indeed, but it was just promoted by those economists who who are indeed looking for their own benefits. To be more specific, intellectual pedigree by elevating it to a different level, elevating that metaphor to a different level. So Z fits perfectly. Let's look at question 11 of module 2. In the mountains of Brazil, Barbacena tomentosa and Barbacena macranta, two plants in this family, establish themselves on the soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Plant ecologists Anna Abraham and Patricia de Brito Costa used microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of these two plants, which grow directly into the quartzites, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. The researchers hypothesized that the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process not only creates channels for continued growth but also releases phosphates that provide the vital nutrient phosphorus. So we have to support the hypothesis, and the most important part of solving support or undermine questions is to indeed determine the hypothesis itself, finding. And the hypothesis is that the plants, those two plants, they depend on dissolving rocks because it not only creates channels but also provides a sort of nutrients that they depend on. So we have to support that claim. Let's look at A. Other species in this family are found in terrains with more soil but have root structures similar to those of these two plants. So I would say that this question is false because it says that uh, they have the same root structure, but they now are established on soil. It means that they do not really depend on rock, which undermines our hypothesis. Though these two plants both secret critic and malic acids, each species produces the acids in different proportions. So it doesn't really support nor undermines our indeed conclusion, our findings. So it's not the best fit. It doesn't say anything about the findings. Let's look at C. The roots of these two plants carve new entry points into rocks even when uh, cracks in the surface are readily available. So it means that they don't really need just those channels, those entry points, but they also need the makeup of that rock. And it really shows that they really depend on it because it's not only a way to situate their rocks in, but also a sort of a nutrient that rocks have. So it aligns perfectly with what the findings say right here. Sure, the option. These two plants thrive even when transferred to the surfaces of rocks that do not contain phosphate. So this would indeed undermine our conclusion because we say that they really depend on phosphates, and in that case, zeros undermines then supports our claim. So C is the only option that perfectly matches with our conclusions. Sure. Let's look at question number 14. The domestic sweet potato descends from a wild plant native to South America. It also populates the Polynesian islands, where evidence confirms that native Hawaiians and other indigenous peoples were cultivating the plant centuries before seafaring first occurred over the thousands of miles of ocean separating them from South America. To explain how sweet potato was first introduced to Polynesia, botanist Pablo Munoz Rodriguez and colleagues analyzed the DNA of numerous varieties of the plant, concluding that Polynesian varieties diverged from South American ones over 100,000 years ago. Given that Polynesia was peopled only in the last 3,000 years, the team concluded that, and we should complete that statement, complete that text. Sure, what we know? We know that the domestic sweet potato first originates in South America, and it also populates the Polynesian islands. So it's somehow brought to Polynesian islands. But we did say that native Hawaiians and other indigenous people were cultivating the plant centuries before seafaring first occurred. So it means that there was no seafaring. It means that people couldn't really uh, carry those potatoes from South America to Polynesian islands because there was no seafaring when it originated in Polynesian islands. What's more, it says that when DNAs of those two potatoes were checked, it was found that there is a 100,000 years kind of divergence between the DNAs. It means that if that's a timeline, that's indeed the time when potato first originated, and that's indeed the time when it, let's say, when it originated in Polynesian islands. Let's just assume that it originated after South American ones because we know that uh, this specific potato descends from a wild plant native to South America. So let's just assume it, and we also know that there is a sort of a 100,000 years difference between them. Sure, and we also cannot say that it was people who generally brought that potato to them because let's draw it differently because it seems not that clear. So let's do it like this. So there is a 100,000 years difference between the time when it originated in South America and when it indeed became native to so Polynesian, let's put P, and we indeed know that it cannot be attributed to people because people started populating that islands only 3,000 years ago. Let's put it like this. So it descended somewhere right here, so there is no way people brought it to Polynesian islands. Sure, let's look at the options. The cultivation of the sweet potato in Polynesia likely predates its cultivation in South America. So we cannot really infer it because we are kind of clearly said that domestic sweet potato descends from a wild plant native to South America. And what's more, that there was no seafaring, so it couldn't indeed be first cultivated in Polynesian islands. So this one is false. Polynesian peoples likely acquired the sweet potato from South American peoples only within the last 3,000 years. So it's also incorrect because we know that they indeed started populating it 100,000 years ago, populating those Polynesian islands. So C. Human activity likely played no role in the introduction of the sweet potato in Polynesia. This one really fits because now we can infer that people they started populating Polynesian islands 3,000 years ago, but potatoes they actually started, let's say, populating those islands 100,000 years ago. So C is the best option so far. Let's look at D. Polynesian sweet potato varieties likely descend from a single South American variety that was domesticated, not wild. We have no idea if it was domesticated or wild, and it's not even the direction, it's not even the focus of our passage, so it's completely off. And the best option here would be C.
So moving on with the statistics. So the first question: 4.36 square miles. We have to transform it into square yards. So first of all, I have to understand that mile is going to be equal to 176 yards. And I have to find in yards square, so I have to square both sides. So it will be m in the power of 2 is equal to 1760 in the power of 2 yards in the power of 2. As you can see, I'm able to replace this with this and have 4.36 multiplied by 1760 in the power of 2 yards power of 2, which is going to be equal to D. Next question. The dot plots represent the distribution of the values in data sets A and B. So I clearly can see that in data set A, the numbers are closer to each other. As you can see, you've got numbers centered around this number, 13. The data set B got more dispersed because I see this kind of triangle, while here I see 3 triangles. which of the following statements must be true? So the statements about the standard deviation should be different, believe. So the median dataset A is equal to the median of dataset B, which is equal. Believe yes, because the median of this dataset A is going to be equal to 13, and the median of this dataset is also going to be equal to 13, right? If there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, so yeah, it's going to be 13. The standard deviation is equal to standard deviation of dataset B. I believe this is false because I just said that they're different. In this case, the standard deviation is going to be lower than the standard deviation of this dataset. So it's going to be only A. So you're done with statistics. Now we'll be moving to the algebra part. So, in fact, this is the question which I think got adapted from another question from another practice test. Okay, in this equation, C is a positive constant, which of the following is one of the solutions to the given equation. I would like to solve it by, first of all, isolating all the numbers from, the variables. So I've got x in the power of 2 minus c in the power of 2 divided by square root of x in the power of 2 minus c in the power of 2, which is equal to 39. You can basically move on by dividing this by this number by doing this. Power of 2 divided by square root of x in the power of 2 minus c in the power of 2. So they are going to get simplified, and it's going to be equal to 39. That's what I can say is that x would be equal to basically 39 squared plus c in the power of 2. This. And I would like to go with, so it should be under the square root, but I'm going to just make it the power of 1 over 2. So going to be the answer of D. Okay, so I have to show that a system has no solution. I can do this by, first of all, having this function be normal. So it's going to be equal to 4x is equal to 18y plus 5, I bet, minus 5. For this one, it's going to be hy is equal to 4x plus 2. Fortunately, we have different y-intercepts. It would result in basically having to just equalize the coefficients before y and before x. So in this case, the coefficient before x is 4 and coefficient before y for the first equation is going to be 18. So for the second one, it also must be 18. Because this way we can have the same slopes, and this is why the equations will be parallel. So if f is defined by 4x plus kx minus 1, so it's saying that f of 5 is equal to 32. I would like to plug in 5 and equalize the y to 32. So the 32 is equal to 20 plus 4k. And k is going to be equal to 3. This is why I can just replace it with 3. What's the value of f of 10? So it will be equal, so it's going to be 4 multiplied by 10 plus 27, which is going to be equal to 67. A small business owner budgets 22,000 to purchase candles. So must purchase at minimum 200 candles to attain the discounted pricing. So the owner pays this many for small, this many for big. What's the maximum number of candles? First of all, there are two types of candles, X and Y. If you add them, you must get at least 200. And their pricing should be at most 22,000. Here I have to change one thing. Okay, that's why I'm able to plug this in into Desmos, which I'm going to do quickly. So you got this Desmos answer, something like this, and we are going to get this highest points because we're supposed to find the maximum. So at this highest point, the value of f is going to be 182 point like 0.3, but we care only about this thing, 182. This many large candles you can purchase, so it's going to be 182. Let's go to the next question. So in this equation, k is an integer. If the equation has no real solutions, okay, what's the least possible value of k? Also keep in mind that it's an integer. Well, in this case, I would like to open the brackets and get this. In fact, here are going to be two possible solutions. Both of them are equally good. First one is using Desmos calculator, where you're just going to plug it in, right? And let me show you how to do that. Okay, so this is what you're supposed to put into Desmos. There's no need to use a lot of Desmos tricks here. I just combined. I just use Desmos to make the process much more convenient and faster. So this is the discriminant, in fact, because I know that for us to have no solutions, then the b squared minus 4ac should be equal to 0. So what I've done is that I just got the b as minus 56. I got a as k, c as 16, and I just equalize it to 0. Just to not have myself going and, checking the graph, looking at all of this math, using just x's and this equal sign. I use the regression parameter here, as you can see. This is a pretty popular trick. So I'm just replacing all the x's with the k, x1, basically any other number, any other letter. And instead of equal sign, I'm using this sign. That's it. I'm having my answer given to me. That's kind of 49. So it'd be nice to move to the next part, which is going to be the advanced math. So for each real number r, which of the following points lies on the graph of each equation in the xy plane? In fact, there are two solutions. One which is identifying what the function is. In this case, the function is going to be this. And we should convert it into the normal form. Y is equal to minus 2 over 3x plus 7 over 2, right? So you've got this function, and you probably can see the correlation, right? Look at this, guys. If you look at the option choices B and D, you got that something is similar, right? And yes, in fact, it is identical. But I think that I made a calculation mistake. No, I don't think that I made the calculation mistake, but okay. So the solution that I usually use is basically just plugging in both into Desmos. Both, I mean the function itself and the points, and then moving the points to see whether the coordinates align at any value of r, right? So let me show you how it works. Okay, so this is what I do in Desmos. I plug in the function first, then I plug in all other options. In fact, at most you have to do three because, I mean, if you know that A, B, C are wrong, then D must be the answer. But in this case, D is wrong too. So what I'm doing here is that I'm also labeling it A, B, C, putting it on the screen. So I know that B is the correct answer because if I move B, this point, either up or down, then it's not going off track, so it is on the purple line. However, C and D are obviously not on the track. In fact, A is going to parallel to the purple line, and C is going to be perpendicular to the parallel line, to this purple line. That's why the answer must be. Scientists measures 12,000 bacteria in a gross medium. 4 hours later, there are 24,000. So I can already say that basically the basically it should be at least 12,000. It is doubling every 4 hours. It means that the period is going to be 4. So the answer must be B. So how I do this, it's because I know the formula. I know that P is equal to, P is the exponential function, is equal to A, 1 plus R over 100 in the power of T over D. It basically says, X over D, my bad. It basically says that every D hours, A is increasing by R percent. In this case, it's 100%, right? Because it's doubling every 4 hours. Okay. Well, the rocket, no, the physics class is planning an experiment about toy rocket. This is the equation that I've got. I know that this is the typical vertex form, which looks something like this. And yeah, this y1 and all of these things just means that this is the coordinate of a vertex. So let me just change it to more appropriate notation. Right? Means that I know that after 5.6 seconds, it's going to reach a 502 feet height. Toy rocket reaches an estimated maximum height of, let's see, but either this or this in 5.6 seconds. So this is typical quadratic function. I'm going to take it and use this formula that I know. Divided by 2a. So a is equal to 1, b is equal to minus 2, and c is equal to minus 3. So I also know that basically it's going to be minus, so it's going to be 4 over 2a plus minus square root of b squared. 4 plus 36 divided by 2a. Or 2a. A is going to be 2, but if it goes under the square root, it's going to be squared. It's going to be 4. It's going to be 2 plus minus square root of 10. So it should be b. Okay, so we are done with it, and we are moving to the geometry finally. Triangle ABC is similar to triangle XYZ. It means that I'm going to build the triangle ABC, and I've got X, Y, Z. So in triangle ABC, the length of AB is equal to 170, and the triangle BC is equal to 850. The length of XY is equal to 60. What's the length of XY? YZ is 60. I know something called proportions. I can relate these sides, so I can say that this side is some number bigger than y x side. I know that AB is going to be equal to certain k multiplied by xy. Now, if this k is identical across all the sides, then I can say that these two triangles are similar. So I know that it's going to be like this. And that's a system. That's a system. I can say that k's are going to get simplified. I know that AB 170 over 850, so I can divide it. By the way, there's a disclaimer that some time ago Bakhtiarov said that you're not allowed to do this, but it's completely wrong. You're more than allowed to do anything with the system of equations. Okay, it might be a little bit rare to do this, or it might not be really popular, but it is possible. You can do anything. So it's going to be equal to xy over yz. Xy is going to be equal to 60. Yz is going to be equal to, oh, what xy is equal to some number over yz, which is 60. If you BC 850. So x in this case should be equal to, I believe, 12. So if you do some magic and put it into, plug it in basically Desmos, you're going to get 12. Show the following circle xy plane intersects y-axis at exactly 1 point. So in this problem, I would really like to use my Desmos skills. There is no need absolutely to, guess it. There's absolutely no need to, think about it using traditional math. It's always better to just, plug it into Desmos and don't worry about it. Because otherwise you might make a calculation mistake. So let me do it. Okay, and here it is. What I basically did is that I plugged in option choices A, B, C, and don't worry that I wrote, H1, K1, and all of this thing. I just transferred A, B, C as they are. Okay, so these are the circles that I got. Again, purple is going to be the C, black is going to be A, and red is going to be B. That's why I know that C is the correct answer, because I'm supposed to touch the y-axis, and that's the y-axis, and it's touching it only once. So it should be C. So a square is inscribed into a circle. So I think it should be nice if I do this. Okay, so let's just pretend that everything's all right here. I know that the diameter of a circle is gonna be our diagonal of a square, and I know that all the sides of the square are equal to each other. And I know that if I do the diagonals, then I'm going to have 45 here, 45 here. Means that I know that if the side is equal to A, then the diagonal is going to be equal to square root of 2A, and the other side is also A, other side is also A, A. This is because of the special right triangle, which says that for a right triangle of 45 degrees, so it's called the right isosceles triangle, then the hypotenuse is going to be square root of 2 times one of the sides, because all the sides are equal, so we don't care about exact size. Exact side. So I know that the radius of a circle is going to be the half of it, so square root of 2 divided by 2a is going to be equal to 20 square root of 2 divided by 2. A is going to be equal to 20. So, okay, so what's still side length of the, okay, that's going to be 20. It's going to be A. Okay, let's move on to 13. The triangle PQR element are graphed on the xy plane. Okay, okay. So in fact, it would basically look extremely similar to this. So this is the quadrant number 1. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. So this is going to be the quadrant number 1, and it would be nice if I use shape. Okay, so this. Now I know that the points 4, 5 is going to be somewhere here. 0.47 is going to be somewhere here. 6.5 is going to be somewhere. 6.5 going to be somewhere here. So this is the triangle number 1. P, Q, R. And the other triangle is going to be at 405. So it's N. So it's going to be L and M. So it's going to be L, M, and I don't think that it even matters that we have basically that L and M are mixed with each other. That's all right. Now I know that the L is going to be at 4, right? X is going to be 4, and the Y is going to be 7 plus K. So it's going to be certain distance away. And M is also going to be certain distance away. But this distance is identical. And the fact that they are identical, this distance is identical, implies that these two triangles are in fact similar, right? So it means that these two triangles are similar. And if I know that this is 90 degrees, if we just connect it, and if I know that that's an isosceles right triangle because of the fact that okay, so I don't know if that's an isosceles triangle, but I know that if this is 90, then this side is going to be 90 minus basically this side, this angle. So why I'm saying it? It's because I know that in triangle the sum of all angles can be 180 degrees. So it means that basically 90 plus t plus plus the angle of n is going to be, yeah, so it's going to be equal to 180. So it means that 90, right, minus t is going to be equal to the angle of n. Things should already be understandable. That's why the answer should be C. Okay. So with this, we're concluding the analysis of the practice test hardest questions. In fact, it was extremely easy one, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope that next time we're going to look over other global practice tests, which are much more exciting. Please don't forget to leave your